It's very difficult to characterize or to describe my father to somebody who doesn't know. It's interesting to see this paradox. Well, he's well known, and yet he's not known. Art history needs to have those boxes where you put people in. He got put in as a Latin American artist, as a Cuban artist, and I think that's one of the reasons that he was a little bit in nowhere compared to the actual work.
This seems like such an important moment to look at his work again. His issues and the things that he cared about are still important today. He believes in the power of art to make change.
This kind of empathy that you feel in Lam's practice throughout his life is really like serving the cause of the people. How do you tell that experience, the experience of exile, of diaspora? How do you create something that's profoundly transnational?
En principio, je crois que nous tous sommes des rebelles. Vous savez, moi je n'étais pas très conformiste jamais.
I remember one time I was alone with him during a trip, and he laughed and he said, "Oh, one day, Eskil, you will have to take care of all of this." You realize how important it is to be this kind of repository of all the memories, but also make sure that what's circulating is rightful. This is a very interesting book. It's a book that my father did in the mid-70s. His pictures and photographs and statements. It's a very special book. My father was born at the beginning of last century, in 1902. His father, my grandfather, was born in Guangzhou, China. His mother was Cuban, but of Congolese and Spanish descent. So when you have those very complex heritage, it's difficult to synthesize in a few words. He eventually got a grant to go further. He studied in Spain, and he went there in 1923 to be a portraitist.
He's there with intellectuals from Europe and Latin America and starts becoming interested in modernism. But it's a difficult time.
This is when the Spanish Civil War broke out, then his political consciousness came to be at that moment. He felt very strongly about fighting against the very repressive regimes of fascism. That's the first time he actually experiences war and joined the battle. And this is where he met a friend of Picasso who prompted him to go to Paris and gave him this letter of introduction.
Picasso will help him to find a first gallery and to really introduce him to this extraordinary group of people based at that time in Paris.
Picasso m'a présenté à André Breton, alors j'ai trouvé qu'il y avait touché quelque chose de très important et j'ai devenu membre du mouvement surréaliste.
That time in Paris is going to come to an end because of the arrival of the German troops, and he has to flee.
Okay, so I want to show you this one picture, which I find very interesting. And it's him in 1940, just before the German invasion. He feels like something is going to happen, and he has a photographer come and shoot all his production. Then he rolled it up and went to Picasso and had Picasso to look over it and to keep them until after the war, which he did. It was an anxious moment. It was total chaos, and he managed to go to Marseille. His friends, the Surrealists and other artists were joining up there.
All of these people are holed up, trying to get out of Marseille, trying to save themselves. And at the same time that they're living under these extreme conditions, they're working together, they're making drawings together, they're playing together. And they're trying to find a way out of their problems by creation, by making these things together. That's a spirit and a practice that stays with him throughout his career.
This is a very important moment stylistically because his drawings really change radically from what was being done before. We have this hybridization of figures, half animal, half human, this new form that come to be just at that moment.
All those writers and friends hoping to catch a boat to get out of France and find a way to the United States. Lam doesn't have that chance. He's not accepted into the United States, he's not accepted into Mexico. And he found himself again in Cuba, very much alone, stunned by the poverty of his homeland that he hadn't encountered for almost 20 years. And that's exactly there that he's going to rethink his practice. But he's going to think about his own tradition, his own culture, and how he can blend that within this idea of modernism. That's where he's going to produce very quickly after his arrival, The Jungle.
When he returned, he was really taken with the quality of the light and the vibrancy of the colors. He talked about how it seemed like forms were lit from within. You look at it and it looks like a canvas painting, but it's not. It's a work on paper. In the late 1930s to about the mid-1940s, he had a real disruption in both his finances and his access to materials. But as a true artist who's bound and determined to make work anyways, he uses paper. And he uses this very common industrial material, craft paper, to make these large works. He's diluting the oil paint, thinning it out, because that makes it go further. He can make more paintings. But also that is a very, very good thing for working on paper, because if he were to be using a water-based paint with this much on the paper, it surely would have created lots of cockling and distortions because the paper would have been sopping wet. The thinnest is where it was so liquid and so wet that it was literally dripping down the surface. And you see that in many areas. And to me, that also speaks somewhat of the speed with which he's working. He painted in a very intense and focused manner in these kind of short bursts of activity. He would sleep in the day and entertain people that came and visited, and then the nighttime was really his uninterrupted studio time. The density of the way Lam layers the paint is really kind of paralleled by the density in the image. It's just chocked full of feet and limbs and stalks and leaves. How do all these figures and appendages resolve? I think the answer is maybe they don't. That ambiguity is part of it. I think it's intentional. As a viewer, I am always struck, I feel like I'm intruding on this gathering, and I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here.
Ce tableau était plus inspiré sur la nature, mais les ombres sont presque moitié animal, moitié végétal. À gauche, je trouve une femme terrible avec un ciseau, comme que la nature va produire une mutation sur cette décomposition pragmatique et mécanique qui ne l'est pas correspondue à l'économie de mon pays dans ce moment.
He really reinvents his practice in Cuba and creates a whole new imaginary of visual symbols that is a way forward for him from his influence and interest in various Afro-Caribbean religions. I think these characters come from this idea of transformation and empowerment. There's no literal depiction. It's about him being interested in Afro-diasporic culture writ large and trying to find a place for that and a context for that in his pictures. His dear friend, Aimé Césaire, wrote this amazing poem called Retorno al País Natal, or The Return to the Native Country. And the very end of that says, the only way to begin is to end the world and start anew, basically. And I really feel like that's part of Lam's project, is to like create something completely different that supersedes or is transforming reality and getting to another place.
This is text by Césaire. Les pays roulent bord sur bord leur destin de misère. Depuis des siècles, bord sur bord, leur cargaison de bêtes hagardes ou lasses. Et la peinture de Wifredo Lam roule bord sur bord sa cargaison de révolte. Hommes pleins de feuilles, sexes germés, poussés à contresens, hiératiques et tropicaux des dieux.
Es una cosa bastante remarcable, vienen miles de fotografías, pero siempre viene, ¿no? Mejor dicho, esta imagen siempre de este pájaro transformado, que en principio era un murciélago, y ahora se ha convertido, como tú ves aquí, se ha convertido en un símbolo, casi se puede decir, de mis cosas. El pájaro que me ha hecho y me ha animado, y que soy yo mismo, que corre detrás de algo, ¿tú comprendes?, a encontrar. ¿Qué es lo que encontramos en ese fin de camino? Yo creo que en este caso podemos decir que yo he encontrado amigos, gente que tienen la misma idea que yo, que uno existe en la tierra y que consume el tiempo en algo, ¿tú comprendes?, que tiene una realidad concreta.